All right. Hey, everybody. How you doing? Hopefully, I'm not on mute. Can everybody hear me? Steve?
I hear you loud and clear. Good.
All right, good, man. I always worry about that. You started showing like, hey, dude, you're on mute. So, hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. My name is Danny Guillory. I'm a senior program manager here at Microsoft. I'm responsible for all things cloud attached. And as you can see, I got a whole slew of people with me today. So this is really exciting for me because this is the first time we've had like this many people on the show. And we have some special guests, people that I talk to every day. Adam, Jeremy. Actually, let's just go down the line. Steve, go intros.
Well, I'm not important here, at least not for this episode. But Steve Thomas, here with Danny as always. Danny and I, yes, we talk to each other every day. We're trying to put a limit on that, but you know how it can go. Anyway, onward. Jason Sandys is here.
I am. Hey, everybody. So I talk to Danny and Steve quite often as well, along with some of these other folks. I do all things endpoint manager, longtime MVP, love the community, love the product, probably, I don't know, even more, maybe less, I don't know. Got lots of interesting perspectives because I have, I've seen inside and out, the good, the bad, the ugly, and lots of stuff anywhere in between. Adam, I called you out. Why don't you go?
All right. Hey, I'm Adam Gross. I'm a Microsoft MVP for the last couple of years, and I work for a chemical company in Texas and manage the desktop world there, and then do consulting and blogging and all those sorts of things. So I'm dabbling all over the place, and I keep changing my number, and Danny keeps finding me. So here I am.
Hey, should we give a quick shout out to ERCOT because our power's still on?
Yes, I mean, there's ice hanging from the trees out here, but hey, the power's still on, so good deal.
It's doing fine here in DFW as well.
All right, Anton.
All right.
Hey, my name is Anton. I'm an engineer on the endpoint manager team. I keep annoying Danny almost every day, I think. He's running away from me, but hey, I'd love to hear your questions and answer and just get your feedback. So thank you very much for joining, and just let us know.
And last but not least, Jeremy.
Yeah, hey, Jeremy Borger. I'm a senior architect on our enterprise architecture team at Foot Locker, and I do all things M365. Work with a lot of people in the organization across our store, workplace, and security teams to drive adoption of Microsoft 365.
Cool. All right, so I just want to remind the audience, hey, we got all these great people on the show. Feel free to ask questions. We're going to kind of start off with some icebreakers. We'll talk to Jeremy about what they're doing over there at Foot Locker, but just reminding everybody, we're here for the engagement, right? Ask questions. No question is too stupid, right? Don't ask. If you don't ask, you won't know, right? So ask any questions you may want. We've got lots of people here. We'll come off of mute and answer your question, or we'll go ahead and answer it through chat. And maybe we'll do both. But I really would like to start with Jeremy and ask, hey, what drove you to configuration manager, cloud attached, Intune? Like, tell me what your journey was there at Foot Locker. What were y'all trying to do?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. I think it's important to understand some of the context, right? Our infrastructure teams were pretty dispersed, right? We had a distributed IT team, right? Each site kind of did their own thing from an IT perspective, and as part of like our Office 365 initiative a number of years ago, we started to centralize a lot of the IT functions into core shared services. So for us, outside of Office 365, the device management and security realms was really about driving adoption of kind of core common things, patching, operating system configurations. That just ultimately led into where we're moving towards cloud management, being able to manage devices wherever they're at. It's just kind of a natural progression, quite honestly.
Cool. So as you went through that natural progression, kind of give me a little bit about like, what did you decide to tackle first, second, third, or did you even prioritize? Like, what was your strategy around like, okay, this is where we want to go? A little bit around that strategy, like what did you decide to tackle first, second, or third?
Yeah. So our first strategy was cloud first, right? So I came into the organization in 2000, end of 2017, at talking MDM, right? How do we move to MDM management? Again, we weren't a config manager customer at the time, so the conversation was kind of hard because the tooling that we were using didn't support that, right? So as we got into the nuts and bolts of it, the conversation around settings management and identity and operating system images, like all of the stuff that you would think of as like the bread and butter of your desktop team, we had to kind of stand up from the ground again because the organization was pretty distributed, right, from a IT model perspective. So as we kind of centralized a lot of that work and worked towards this, our UEM strategy, it was about getting devices enrolled into a single common platform and leveraging MDM as much as we could. And so that was really the kind of the impetus of our M365 journey.
So kind of Adam, hearing what he's saying, and I know you're a VP, you work with a lot of customers as well as the community. Does that resonate in how customers are starting to think about it, or as they think about going to the cloud and cloud attaching? Like give us a little bit more what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I'm in that same boat as my company is moving to the cloud as we speak, and there is. I think every organization has different challenges when it comes to it, and you have to figure out like, okay, how bad is your group policy sprawl, and what are you going to do around those things, and really getting comfortable with looking at co-management and saying, okay, what are the what do these workloads actually do, and how are they going to impact my users, and getting to that comfort level that, okay, when I move my Windows Update for Business workload to the cloud, am I really sure that I don't have any policies that are going to impact that, or you've got years and years of stuff stacked on top of this environment, and we're about to move a major piece, and are we really sure that this is it? And so there's that really big hesitation to push that first button and start making the transition. I think at least talking about the co-management workloads, at least the tenant attached piece, man, you should click that button now. Like, you can get so much value out of that. Start moving your techs into the cloud and start looking at let them get comfortable in the Intune console and be able to do some of the daily actions that they're already doing, things like CM pivot and run scripts. Do those things from the cloud now and get them familiar with that before you fully migrate and transition all the way into Intune. If you plan to fully transition, you can do both.
So you mentioned a good point, and one of the things that I find myself talking a lot to customers about, and others chime in as you need, as you have your conversations. But the things that I have to break apart with customers is the enablement versus the moving the workload, right? Like, you hit the nail on the head, right? Turn on tenant attach now. So low risk, no risk. I mean, you're not going to turn it on and then there's a fire as you're driving home, 5 o'clock, help desk is calling you blowing up. Like, if you enabled both of the capabilities and never looked at the cloud console, you'll never know anything happened. But when you start moving workloads, you need to know what is on the other side, because that is where some things, I wouldn't say it's a huge increase in risk, but it's really common sense. You move the slider to move a policy to come from another source. So you need to know what that source is telling your devices to do. And I can say a lot more about Paul. I'm sure Jason and Anton want to jump in.
Looks like Anton might not be jumping at the bit on that one, but yeah, I mean, it's, we joke internally that how easy it is to turn on tenant attach, for sure. And I think it's a true statement, right? From a technical perspective. And one of the points I always have too is there's no infrastructure costs, right? There's no licensing costs to this. And there's just upside as long as you're not willy-nilly moving the sliders over, right? Just like you were talking about. And embracing the future, that's where we want people to go, right? Do we want people to go all in, everything, throw away everything on-prem and go everything cloud, right? If you want to do that, great. No one's going to stop you from doing that. But at the same time, those baby steps are important. And that's what these are, right? These are baby steps. Get folks used to you using the cloud, right? There's so many organizations that are still so cloud averse. And so it's just, dipping your toes in the water, proving to everyone that, hey, this actually works. There's benefits to us doing this. The downsides are minuscule, if at all, right? I mean, I can't even really think of any downsides. I'm sure someone out there can think of something, but everything has at least a little bit of risk when you move to it. But staying where you are, that's a risk as well. I think that's something that people forget about, right? The world's moving on. Hackers have figured out how to get to anything that you have on-prem, right? The wonderful saying, there's two types of organizations: those who have been hacked and those who don't know they've been hacked, right? There really is nothing else in between. And that's your on-prem environment. So if you're starting to move stuff to the cloud, you're going to get security, you're going to get all these additional benefits. And so, yeah, it's drop dead easy. People definitely need to be looking at doing it and putting up in your test environments. Too many people don't have test environments. So.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Jason. It's amazing what this pandemic has taught us. If it's taught us anything, that companies can do this transformation if they really, really have to do it. And they can do it pretty quickly too. And the notion of how much risk is involved here. Again, I can't echo Jason's sentiment more. I mean, it was more riskier for companies when the pandemic happened not to move to the cloud, not to move to a hybrid world. A little bit of housekeeping here. We did get an early question because we're now taking questions prior to the show, and it revolved around, how do I do tenant attach if I am using a third-party MDM? And the answer is you don't. Tenant attach is a value add of Microsoft Endpoint Manager, which now includes Config Manager and the product formerly known as Microsoft Intune. So we got that out of the way. All right, back to the regular show.
So Danny, can I interject here? So recently we were looking at moving the Windows Update for Business workload, and that's a really easy one to do. But we started doing some testing on it, and as I was doing that, I was digging through our clients to see, we've done multiple feature updates, and I had some collections showing devices at different revisions, and realized that we had a really kind of a large number of devices that hadn't gotten to the latest feature update. And as I started digging in, I started noticing our patch compliance was a little bit low. I've been busy focused on other things, haven't really looked at it in a bit, and I was like, wow, this is interesting. Well, a couple months back, I think Microsoft may have superseded some required updates in their updates, and yeah, I think we missed it, and WSUS didn't have the updates, and so I was able to remediate this by just moving these devices to Windows Update for Business. When they checked in, they all patched right up, and so I'm looking at this as we trust Config Manager and we trust that client, but sometimes there's some care and feeding that just has to happen that, maybe you just can't get there. And I love the idea that now we're removing the middleman for some of these things where WSUS and Config Manager aren't the gatekeeper to getting updates. I can now fully patch my machine. And then in addition, we're getting driver updates that we now don't have to manage separately. Recently we've had some reports of, hey, on my some of my devices, I can't pair my mobile device anymore. I can't use it as a hotspot. Turns out driver update fixes it. Well, instead of having to push the manufacturer's driver update, hit Windows Update for Business and fixes the problem right away. So we're definitely starting to already see some value add from being able to just move that one of those sliders.
That's actually really good to hear. And Anton, isn't that kind of some of the stuff you heard when you went out to MMS? I know you went to the last MMS we had, and I'm super jealous you went and I didn't, but I had vacation. But whatever.
Yeah.
We're not gonna dig there.
Yeah, I get to go. Yes. It was a great event, and I've heard actually quite a bit of comments to what Adam mentioned as well, that Update for Business was help customers get to compliance much faster, which is great. Awesome. If we could do that and help customers, that's awesome, right? That's very important. Also, a couple of things I wanted to mention is, first of all, as an engineer, right? Like keep coding, but I'm also always looking for, well, and not just me, the whole team, right? Like, how can we add more value, right? And how can we help customers more? And so the cloud attach, I'm super excited about customers attaching, and I just feel that we actually get customers a lot more value when customers cloud attach. And just that resonated again when we were at MMS and had the privilege of listening to the customers mentioning, hey, I did cloud attach, and all of a sudden, boom, I could see the analytics. I could get so many interesting insights, and I could see what's happening in my environment that I wasn't even able to see. I could go take actions. I can go install my apps. I can do a lot more stuff, and so this is great to hear that that immediate value that customers get from cloud attaching is the customers take advantage of it. And one more thing I wanted to mention: we recently announced, you've probably seen this in our docs, that we moved some of our tenant dash functionality to general availability. Yay! Finally, that's awesome. I know if you, I think I think Jason was harassing us for quite a bit about that.
He harassed.
So
That's what a
me and
PM's
you
job
enough,
is
right?
harassing the devs.
Hey,
isn't it?
that's perfect. Great. So yeah.
Well,
so
after I ignored his emails, he just started pinging you, and then you hit me up. It was like all full circle around.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, go after you cloud attach, go click on your devices. If they're tenant attached or command, you'll see a bunch more actions. You can install apps at real time. You could get the details. You can get the online status. You can run some pivot. You could run the scripts, as Adam mentioned, right there from the cloud console or from your phone, right? You could do it from your phone. So so super excited about that. So, but with any general availability, the work doesn't stop there, right? So please tell us your feedback. Go to the feedback, the brand new feedback site. Go to submit the feedback through the console. Submit the feedback through on-prem console. Submit the feedback through Twitter. Send us more stuff through Twitter. Please send us the feedback. We're always listening. We want to make sure that we can get you more value.
Yeah, every time Anton gets a Twitter thing, he sends it to me, and it's like, hey, we should go look at this. So Anton's like moved from my favorites list to my not favorites list, and
yeah.
So we talk about tenant attaching that value, and we did talk about the workloads. So Jeremy, I'm like itching to come to you. Like when y'all looked at the different workloads there at Foot Locker, was there a workload you moved first, second, or third? Or did you move any? Like because I get the question a lot, and I'm sure others get the question, hey, what workload should I move first, second? What do you recommend? And I have my way of characterizing it and explaining it. Value versus risk. It just really kind of depends. But tell us a little bit about what Foot Locker did.
Yeah. The first workload that we evaluated moving was apps, right? And I think that going through the testing, after the conversation we had around Intune only versus Intune plus Config Manager. The app workload was really the thing that we looked at testing and evaluating, and that we had some challenges with that. Right, this is before app supersedence was a thing, and there were some other things that were still in flight that you guys were working on, but ended up sliding that back to Config Manager, right? And then the conversation then shifted to, all right, well, what value can we get out of the Intune side of the house? And the first workload that we deployed was the endpoint analytics profile, right? And just that was awesome because as devices came into Config Manager and co-managed and got the profile, like we just immediately started seeing device performance in endpoint analytics, and I think that was a really eye-opening thing for us. And within the month or so, as we were rolling these clients out, we were getting just lots of data of how our devices were performing, core boot times, other issues that we were seeing. A lot of great value there. Outside of that, the bare kind of minimum functionality that I think was really powerful organization was seeing all of the devices in one console, right? And you kind of hit on that a little bit with your question, right? From a support desk perspective, being able to go to one place, see, the user's phone, maybe their Mac, their Windows device, whatever they're using, that's really, really powerful from a support perspective, because I can see all the devices the user has, any policies that are applied to it. That's huge.
I like that, and that's one of the things that I tried to like really characterize to customers. Like when you turn on Tenant Attach, and I was just thinking like, back when I was an admin and IT director, right? If I had Tenant Attach, I could actually have a more real conversation and dialogue about should help desk now have an actual fat console, right? Because after you go through an upgrade, what's pain of an upgrade after a post upgrade, upgrading everybody's console? Because who comes in very early in the morning? Help desk. What's the thing they're gonna come say to the architects or the engineers? Hey, my console hasn't been updated. So like I have a very distinct look at how we use our tools, right? So internally we talk a lot about scenarios, and I think when I talk to customers, they hear scenario, but they're trying to figure out how does that scenario give them value. And sometimes it could be a long stretch, but sometimes it's not you're maybe not be turning it on for that immediate value, but the value that's actually coming, right? So we're continuously to innovate Tenant Attach as well as co-manage. As Anton said, we removed it out of preview. Now it's GA. So there's no loss of investment, and there's things that's still coming that should drive customers to use it more. And one of the things that I've been yelling at Anton about is right that we got that help desk persona. What other personas can we create? How can we make that more valuable for IT pros? Like when you think about management, you shouldn't necessarily be thinking about, is it on-prem? Is it in the cloud? Like where is the device? So like that, I feel like we should be able to solve that for customers. So not divulging anything, but that's kind of like my thought process. It's like, how do I make those things easier? Like, why are you writing SQL queries to find out information? What can we do surface for you in the cloud to make your IT pro and IT manager experience a lot better? Adam, I'm sure you're kind of hearing the same thing. I mean, you're an MVP. I can't imagine all the Swiss Army knives you've had to do with finding out information from the database or not, or from the client, they gather and aggregating data. I mean, point analytics is a perfect example, right? Here's a bunch of stuff. You see something, you can do something. It's gold.
Yeah, it really is. Being able to just being able to hit any device anywhere is, and that's been Anton and I spent a fair amount of time looking through the admin service recently at MMS in Miami, and I've been excited about admin service since it came on the
very
scene.
Well should be.
And it is not. It's funny because it's not the point of this conversation. However, it is one of the keys to making what we're talking about possible. And it's this whole idea of being able to use this innovative API that it's kind of the back end of the cloud attach, tenant attach, co-management to be able to facilitate this functionality. And I've been looking at that from the beginning, saying this is the key to making any device anywhere management possible. And just trying to push hard on saying, hey, can we add more to this? Can we make this more extensible so that we can, what if we want to do this outside of the what's available through the console, so that we can do those things of like right before Christmas, Anton, I, and Mark Silvey were trading some comments on Twitter, and one of the things was something about using the admin service to create an application to just I want to create a new config manager app. And well, hey, let's do that. And so we started messing around with it, and basically I've gotten to the point where I can build a config manager app with the admin service from anywhere, and do it through the you can do it through the CMG. So that means if you've got a cloud management gateway, you can be anywhere and build apps with this API without having to be inside the console, without having to use the PowerShell commandlets to get to be connected directly to your primary. And that's pretty innovative. Now, that might not be like, oh, nobody's really got that use case of being able to build an app remotely, but just it's just one in the many areas of possibility here of just expand your horizon and say, what could we do if we didn't have X, Y, Z? If we didn't need this thing, if we didn't need to be connected, tied to it's the whole work from home thing. When COVID hit, it's like, man, we realized maybe we didn't actually all have to be in the office. So it's that same kind of thinking. Think through, what do you have today, and what if you didn't have it or didn't need to have that? And what if how could you use these tools to help you get there? Being able to do things in the cloud, from a console, remotely from your phone, man, that just opens so many doors of possibility. Even like selling it as a value proposition of your SLA time. Like, maybe you don't really expect your technicians to be working on a Saturday night, but you could easily take action from your phone while you're out at dinner and say, oh, you know what, there's a really urgent thing I just need to, or a device got stolen, let me wipe it real fast from my phone. That kind of stuff is really powerful, and I think it's an interesting value proposition to be able to promote. But Danny, I'm going to kick it back to you for a second and ask you. So
let me interject real quick.
Oh, sorry.
We have a FUD alert. We have a FUD alert. There's a question. There's a question that says, approaching cloud attach from a long-term roadmap standpoint, which likely doesn't include config manager. What's the value proposition?
Whoa.
Versus moving directly to MEM Intune. That is, I told you. Jason, you want to take that?
Yeah, I was already typing up an answer for that one. So the long and short of it is, if you want to move to Intune fully, awesome. I kind of alluded to this at the beginning. There's no problem with that. However, be aware that Intune and Config Manager, there's no planned parity for every single feature, right? Intune, cloud, modern, those things kind of in general imply simplification of your processes, simplification of capabilities, of your requirements, of your expectations, etc. Which means we're not going to build out every single feature that we have in Config Manager in Intune. So what that also means is that, hey, there are organizations who still need that functionality and will continue to need that functionality. And the bottom line there is that Config Manager is not going away. That's why we have cloud attached, so we can take advantage of the best of both worlds. The better together story that I've been espousing for, I don't know, 6 years or so. For those folks that aren't across the pond, peanut butter and jelly. For those folks across the pond, I can't remember what goes really good for them, but here in the US, peanut butter and jelly is perfect, right? And so, kind of bottom line is, it depends upon your org's requirements and expectations. If you want to go full cloud only because you're getting rid of absolutely everything on-prem and you don't want to put infrastructure into Azure IaaS, and Intune meets all of your expectations and requirements, awesome, go ahead and do it. But if you're like, and I know this is a little bit maybe biased on my opinion, if you're like the vast majority of organizations that actually need just a little bit more than Intune can provide today, which is what Config Manager is there for, Config Manager is not going away anytime soon. And in fact, right, we've actually hired a lot more Config Manager folks recently, so that may be a tidbit that's out there that folks don't know. We're expanding. We are not in any way contracting.
So that brings me I know how to get Adam excited and talk about admin service. And as Adam was talking, as I could think, I was like, this is the way. And then, Steve comes in with the FUD, and like, that gets me excited because the FUD gets me excited because I fight it every day, like literally every day with customers. Hey, when I tenant attach, I don't want my devices talking to the cloud. What simply they start talking to the cloud, just because like the tenant attached piece is a relationship between the the on-prem console and the cloud console. Your devices don't know anything is going on, right? Until you deal with co-management, then you got some cloud services, and then customers are saying, and when I hear customers saying, hey, the long-term strategy is we know Microsoft's going to kill it. Since who told you that? Who told you we're killing man? Like, there's been nobody that I know of has announced it. I don't think anybody here has heard anybody internal say it's dead. It's not dead. And like, literally, I make this shirt, right? It's the safest way to cloud, because you should be cloud connect. Even if your goal from 4 years, 10 years from now is to be all in the cloud, if you have SCCM and you don't cloud connect, look, I'm not afraid to tell you, I think you're doing it wrong. I think you're taking a very harder road than you need to and putting a lot of external pressures on yourself that you don't need to do. And I don't say that because I'm Microsoft. I say that because I've sat on the other side as a system admin and an IT director before. Those external pressures are real, and those external pressures are not things that you have to put yourself to go through. So if you have a configuration manager environment and you don't cloud attach it, maybe you have other goals, maybe you like bruises and scars, but I have had enough in my lifetime since '99 dealing with this product. So cloud attach it, and then as you cloud attach it, you can then start to actually form a low risk strategy. Anybody that's been, any type of leadership role in IT knows that as you climb that IT ladder and mature, it's not about what you can do, it's about how you get to where you need to go with being risk averse. Goes back to kind of what I was talking about with the workloads and the sliders. Customers ask all the time, what should I move? Well, do you want value or do you want risk? The app workload is probably the most easiest one to move. If you didn't know, that one functions different than the other sliders. You can move that slider to the middle or to the far right and use both Software Center and Company Portal. If you move it far left, you're kind of stuck with a Software Center, and Company Portal will say you'll use Software Center. But in a sense, you can move that one and not worry about any risks of things blowing up. If you want more value, move compliance or device configuration. Really just kind of depends on what your organization strategy is. So I'm sorry I kind of took over, but the FUD thing is every day I have to fight with customers and help them understand what they need to do. And I love the admin service. So Adam, great plug on admin service, because this is the way.
I wanted to throw two things.
Oh, go ahead.
First of all, I can't thank Adam enough for all of that feedback. It's just awesome. Thank you for all the feedback you're getting us on admin service. Is super useful for us. Also, to Danny's point, just to throw out there, if you're thinking, whether you should cloud touch or not, let us know. Or you decided you're not going to. Let us know why. If you could spend a few minutes, let us know why.
Definitely want to know why.
Why I would love to understand what we could do better, is it documentation where we're not explaining what the value is? Is it the functionality? Let us know. I would love to hear that.
So Danny, I'm going to throw a plug out because Danny and I discussed at length. He had some. He used Microsoft Paint to kind of show me how he was thinking about revamping the cloud attach node in the console. And so, if you haven't upgraded to Config Manager 2111 and you haven't cloud attached, you should really give it a go, because he's streamlined, or him and all of the folks, the team working behind the scenes, all the folks. He was just drawing the pictures, and they had to translate his paint drawing into something useful. But anyway, if you haven't done it, do that. But one of the things so we're talking about all the value and we're talking about all these buzzwords, but I mean, I want to ask functionally, what actually occurs, without going into too much detail, for those of us who people who haven't clicked those buttons yet, what functionally occurs when you enable tenant attach and whenever you enable co-management? And specifically now in 2111, if you just do the default setting, it will do both for you. But what really happens? Because if I'm afraid to click the co-management button, am I going to get all the workloads at once? And what's actually, when I see my devices are now co-managed in the console, like what actually happened on the client, and where does that go? So anybody can answer that. I think that might be a valuable thing to talk through.
You have a bunch of squirrels that are dark wizards.
Yes, that's it.
The famous squirrels. Yeah, no, Jason, go ahead. I'll let you do it now. I'll fill in gaps if there's any. But
the bottom line, right, for cloud attach, it's a console for Config Manager. It's a cloud console for Config Manager for the most part, and that's generally the way we can think of it. And in that case, it's a direct connection between your on-prem Config Manager server through the CSP. The CSP is, I have that on my head for some reason. That's not the right role. Through the SCP, right? It's just 2 letters difference there. Through the SCP role of Config Manager, and that forms a constant communication effectively between MEM, really the admin console, and your on-prem Config Manager. So if you ever have seen a demo of tenant attached, and this is something that I point out all the time, is if you click on an object, a device that's showing in the MEM console that is tenant attached, and you click on one of the things that are tenant attached enabled, they're actually directly querying your on-prem config manager environment. You'll see these dots go across the screen as it's doing that real-time query via the admin service. Yay, Anton. Yep. Right, and so that's the importance of the admin service there, and that's effectively what's happening there. Now, for co-management, there's really no communication. Co-management is dual management of a device, of a Windows endpoint, by both config manager and Intune. So simultaneously, they're both doing it. Now, I always put the word coordinated in there because we don't want them both to try to do the same thing. So the Windows update workload, like has been mentioned a few times, we either choose, we want Intune to control that, or we want config manager to control that, because, you know, it's the Mr. Miyagi saying, I guess, kind of, we don't want both of them to happen at the same time here. So, and there's really no communication between config manager and Intune as a service. There's coordination at the client level, but as a service, there's no actual communication there. So in theory and really in practice here, both are pretty drop dead simple, right? There's not a whole lot that can go wrong here. It's when you start flipping the workloads over, that's that coordinated part. And Danny talked about that way at the beginning, right? You don't have to move the workloads over initially. You can move them over gradually. You can move them over one at a time, you know, and be totally risk averse. Great, right? And there's pretty easy ways to do that. You can move it over subsets of systems, not a problem. And, you know, as far as tenant attach goes, there's no, right? It's literally just, like I said, it's a console. Right? It's just like you installing another admin console somewhere. There's zero risk involved with that. At least from a communication perspective, right? You still got to secure your logins and you know, have MFA in place and those kinds of pieces. But yeah, it's really not that complicated at the end of the day. And the admin service definitely is a big piece of powering tenant attach, like I said.
So since we got Jeremy from a customer perspective, I know me and you have been going through the journey, like, man, what, almost 2.5 years now. So, yeah. You know, a little bit of curtain behind, like when I got with Jeremy, you know, they didn't have configuration manager, and I told them go straight to the cloud. That's what they wanted to do anyway, right? They just like, hey, we want to go straight to the cloud, and I'm like, okay, great, let's go to the cloud. And that strategy really comes from, I most likely I know where the customer is going to land, but the customer has requirements that they have to meet, right? And they need to go through the exercise. So as we worked with Jeremy and his team, it was more of, hey, we need to go to we're going to go all cloud, but we needed some stronger granular capabilities that configuration manager can build and do for them. So what we did there was, I like that methodology, and Jeremy's the first customer I worked with doing it, but that methodology is around building the pieces you need, not the pieces that you want, because maybe you had a tool, maybe you didn't. And I've seen all too many times customers go, oh, well, this doesn't work, so I'm going to build something else. And they build that thing, and that thing turns out to be a monstrosity. And then 6 months later, they hate it. And it's like, oh, I don't know why I did this. We did this wrong. So the exercise that Jeremy and his team at Foot Locker did was, I think, a good exercise. Jeremy, you can speak for yourself, but I thought it was a great exercise as far as how they did it and things I've done with other customers, because they built what they needed. They didn't go out and build a primary, two primaries, a CAS.
Yeah.
It gets in, I mean, it's really weird because I've seen customers do that. But go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, I mean, I think, going back to what Jason was saying, right? Going into a conversation like Intune only requires you to think through what you're doing from an IT service perspective, right? Your processes, the people, how you manage, package, update, like all of these things that you do on-prem. A lot of that doesn't really translate in a lot of cases to the cloud, right? It's about simplification of your IT process. So going into that work was something I think we needed to do anyways, right? Kind of where we're at as an organization perspective. But at the end of the day, kind of to your point, like Danny, we were kind of both knew that there was going to be some config manager, implementation for us. Really, the question was how much of config manager will we be using, right? Two things that I wanted right out of the gate, right? Just great product, great functionality to get that near real-time data of your organization, and then looking at like the targeting aspect was another area, and collection sync to the cloud, right? So I can do dynamic groups in Azure AD, works pretty well, right? But at the end of the day, the things that for us that make Foot Locker unique and how we manage devices and applications and things of that nature, we have more granular need for targeting more so than what Azure Active Directory can do from a dynamic device or group. So being able to synchronize the collection results to the cloud, I think, is a huge value. From a deployment perspective.
I'm super glad you mentioned that, because I tell customers to do that all the time. Every time I hear about, I can't do this with Azure AD, I'm like, again, another value of having configuration manager. Because I know even myself, we all did, right? If you had configuration manager or have configuration manager, you have very complex collections, right? And I'm not saying you need every collection in the cloud, but there may be a subset of collections that you need in the cloud and you want to target from the cloud. So you need some of that uplift from configment to help you adopt the cloud a lot faster. Again, read the shirt. It's safest way to cloud. Don't. I definitely implore customers that come in with the mindset we're just gonna shove it down everybody's throat. We're gonna go do it Intune only. And 6 months later, it's the heartache, the heartburn, the risk that they're super stressed out because they took I won't say the path less taken. I'll just say it's definitely a more stressful road. Like the things that pop up also, and one of the things that I've also found out is that if you're a customer that has like integrations with your configuration manager, those integrations really don't serve you, right? So some other department came and said, hey, we want this tool to help us do blah, blah, blah. Well, you forgot about it. And then all of a sudden you start to, do the cloud thing. You're like, oh, wait, I just broke 3-4 different workflows that were built off of some tool we integrated like 6 months ago, 6 years ago. So anyway, that's my little rant, 2 cents.
Speaking of your shirt, we've already got folks asking where they can get one of your t-shirts, Danny. So I think you've created something there.
My wife made these. If I wind up at MMS, I'll bring some and give them out as prizes or something.
So we have a question, and this one is coming from a standpoint of support. So for organizations that have on-premise config manager managed devices, what is the value add for specifically support teams? I'm paraphrasing, of course. Is there really a benefit to splitting device management across multiple tools?
I'll give a quick response. If you're a help desk, if we're talking about a help desk scenario, that should definitely be, again, immediate value. Hey, I don't have to deploy that console, upgrade that console, therefore. Now, I also will say that we need more feedback of what that help desk person needs. We created that persona, and that persona is great. It's a great start. I do want to improve it. Me and Anton have talked about other personas. Jason, everybody here, I've talked about other personas that we possibly could do. But the thing is, we're not getting the feedback of what more do you need. So whether it be in that help desk persona or some other persona. Anybody else want to chime in? Go for it.
Well, you need to be able to manage the device from anywhere in this new world. And that also means you need to be able to support the device from anywhere as well as a help desk technician. So absolutely, it's going to be beneficial.
Well, I think the key thing I was reading in that was that they're saying they have on-premises devices, and I think that's maybe the catch there is it doesn't matter where the device resides.
Doesn't matter.
We're adding value that comes from the cloud that enables you to do more things that maybe don't exist in the on-prem environment. And really, once you start stepping into Intune capabilities and you start to, once you move that management plane for all your workloads into Intune, it gives you end up with more functionality in Intune than you might have with your on-premises config manager environment. So it's not where the device resides so much; it's where the tools are being built and what's available to you. So you don't have to force your people to go into the cloud, but it's an enabler to take advantage of some of the more cloud focused features.
And Anton, I don't know if I hear the question and I hear Adam's comments, but this validates more what I was talking with you about on that, the one-on-one behind the scenes. It's like, why do customers care where the device is? You should just hit endpointmicrosoft.com and do what you need to do. So, I can't really peel that back as much as I'd like to, but that seems like a thing we should be able to fix.
Yeah, and that's that's our goal, right? Make sure, and as Steve pointed out, right, in this new world, we want to make sure that we can help you manage the device and also respond to either questions or problems very quickly, right? So Cloud Console is definitely a much better way of doing it. Plus, there are a few things we could only do in the cloud to help you figure out what what's going wrong. So there's definitely more that we could do there, for sure.
And that, like Anton's spot on. And like out of the whole session today, if there was one thing I could ask the audience, like, I need you to tell me, what do you need? Tell us what you need. Tweet us, email us. What else do you need for X persona, help desk persona, admin persona? I don't know. And I'm not saying everything needs to go to the cloud, because I'm not trying to put everything in the cloud, but I would love to put the day-to-day thing, the things that like IT pros do their day-to-day actions in the cloud console. And now you should not have to worry about where that device is. Hey, I need to deploy an app. Great. Endpoint.microsoft.com, deploy the app, period, done. No remote control to a server, pop up in a console, use a key fob and log in. It seems like we could do better. That's my point. Anyway, next question, Steve. I can rant all day long.
Steve, can I pop one in here? So we got Fuzzy Wuzzy. He's if you haven't been to the WinAdmins Discord, you should go check that place out after this. But he's one of the guys from over there. So hey. So he says, is there a checklist based on what you've learned from other customers of what roadblocks and new paradigms must be adopted for shifting each of the workloads? Example is there was a mention about group policy changes, et cetera. And so I've got a kind of initial take on that. So I'm in the middle of that now. And yes, is there a checklist? I don't know that there's not a published checklist, but there's one I've been making, and this is actually one of those things I've been yelling at Danny about. I feel like the docs contain information that talk about kind of generically what the workloads do, but I'm looking at it from a perspective of I want to know specifically when I slide this slider, what actually is going to happen to the client, what policies no longer apply from group policy to that machine or from config manager when I make that shift, and how do I verify that that's actually functioning, and how do I ensure that I'm not getting false information and thinking it's working, but really my GPOs are still hitting me or some other configuration is still hitting me. And so trying to get some more rich data around what that looks like, I think is one of those things I'm going to keep pushing for, because I'm struggling with it, and I've got access to some people that can help me with it. But like some of the things I'm looking at is, so from the apps workload, if you slide the apps workload over, that's fine. You can now deliver apps from Intune. But what do I do now when I want to move that specific application to Intune and deliver it from Intune? Well, what's the transition so that I don't see both apps in the company portal, and that kind of deal. Or from a Windows Update for Business perspective, I'm doing Office updates through Config Manager, Windows updates, and third-party updates. And so when I slide Windows Updates workload, that only gets me one of those three. Then I have to do the Office workload to do the Office updates, and then my third-party updates, I have to do something completely different for that. So those are, you got to kind of tackle each one of those silos and say, okay, here are all the fingers in that pie, and making sure that you're accounting for for what each of those workloads is going to do as you move them. So it's kind of tough to, I don't know, maybe other folks have other thoughts on it, on how you've approached it. Maybe Jeremy.
Yeah, I'm thinking, your comment about the group policy move, right? I think we're in the middle of that as well, right? I think that's a pretty hot topic right now in the space. I think a couple things I'd say that we found: the policy conflict control MDM setting was really helpful for us, just to kind of determine what precedents you want as an organization, like where your policy is coming from and what applies. Again, in the case of like a hybrid joined device, right? You have policy coming from group policy. You may have some things coming from the MDM side of the house. That was really helpful for us, right? The other side of that, I'd say, is probably like, what do you move, right? Why do you move, right? And I think there's not a lot of good context, you know, as somebody like launches the group policy snap in and looks at it, and you're looking at like this daunting task of like moving policy, you have, you know, and for my experience has always been group policy is you know, written and authored by somebody, you know, 10 years ago that's no longer with the company, and here you go, right? That's every place I've worked is like that, right? And you know, I think for ultimately the approach that that we ended up taking was actually akin to what we did with MEM, which was we were going to evaluate Intune first and try to get directly to the cloud, fall back on-prem when needed. But you know, going through that process of like looking through your policies and like, what do we need to do? What can we cut? Things that Jason was kind of mentioning there earlier on. We didn't do that with group policy, right? We just like, we're going to lift and shift. We're going to lift and shift. We're going to lift and shift, right? And this thing just continued to spin its wheels for, you know, a solid year and a half, right? We didn't make any progress. And I had a guy virtually pull me aside.
Do you work at my company?
One of the guys on my team kind of like virtually pulled me aside. He's like, hey, why don't we think about this a little differently and do kind of what we did with evaluating cloud first, right? Let's instead of lift and shift, let's build for, you know, what we want to manage in the future, right? And like do that directly in MDM. And so I think personally that's taken a little bit more. We've got a lot more progress out of that versus like, here's all this stuff. I'm gonna upload it. I'm gonna move it. I'm gonna like. It's really, really a daunting task if you take that approach, and you're probably not going to make a lot of progress. That's just my background in the group policy management mode.
Speaking of the group policies, the one fun one that we are faced with at this point is looking at group policy preferences and what do we do with those. And you know, currently my strategy is I'm going to dump them into CIs because those are a little bit easier, more familiar for our existing devices anyway. And then eventually move those into things like proactive remediations or find ways to not need them. But man, there's it's weird. You look at 20 years worth of GPOs and you have to go back through and say, you know, is this even still a thing? Like, why I didn't have any
policy rationalization. Go back to the premiere episode. You don't have policies.
Yeah, I mean,
policy
honestly,
pizza party.
Yeah.
The it's very similar to what approach we're taking, right? Is like, if you look at group policy, right, you may find like something's linked to a container with one person in it, right? It's like, why are we doing that, right? Let's stop doing that, right? There's the first thing. If we can cut it, we can cut it. If we can't, then we look at, does it go to MDM? If it goes to MDM, great, we're done, right? If it doesn't go to MDM, CI, right? And then the last thing that we should be hitting, you know, is like, oh, we're going to put it in you know, AD and we're going to leave it there, right? Because there's some weird reason why we need it. But the approach that you mentioned there is the same approach that I've talked with the team about. Cut it if we can, MDM, CI, and then why are we really setting this ultimately, right? If we're getting to that bottom point where it has to be a GPO, why are we doing this, guys?
Yep, absolutely.
So Steve got 8 minutes left, so I'll give the people some time back on Friday. So let's try to end on time. But like, is there any hot topic question that we want to tackle on the air? I guess it's for anybody that's watching the questions.
The cool thing about having a big crowd like this is they're also participating in the chat too. So, you know, we've got a lot. We had 30 plus questions this week, but they're all answered. And this is incredible. Again, Danny and I do this show for the engagement more than anything. We love the guests, but we also love the engagement too. And you know, there are a lot of questions that have come up about you know, Dave Geyer's recent blog article, some other stuff that might be slightly off topic. And this is great because this will help us prepare our next few episodes as well. Because obviously, there's a lot of interest in updating and patching still. You know, probably the biggest one that has popped up is something that we've been looking at. I know Jason's one of our architects, and he's been working with various feature PMs about, you know, customers are wanting a checklist, for lack of a better word, but more prescriptive guidance on shifting each of the workloads.
I have a comment. Can I?
Excellent.
So it's kind of a trigger point for me. And I will say that question is very, very valid as a customer. I think as Microsoft, because every customer is unique, every customer is different. I know that sounds cliche saying it, but look, when I was on the other side, I appreciated Microsoft's perspective, but I am not Microsoft. I need to find the pieces that Microsoft can give me and then find a way to make them my own. So the way that I try to give feedback to customers is like, hey, I want something prescriptive. Let's work together, show you the thought process, and then show you how to create your own prescriptive type action, right? Because the prescription that works for Steve companies, Jason companies, Anton's, Adams, and James is all going to be different. Now, the first 10 steps may be the same, but there's going to be a step in there that's different and doesn't work. So
I'm working that now. I work with state and local governments now, and it's completely.
That's the thing.
Yeah,
that's the thing. It's like everybody wants that word, best practice, right? But
or one size fits all. One size.
Yeah,
yeah.
As much as you want to think that from the outside world, because it'll help you and get from point A to point B so much faster, I think even if we had it, it wouldn't be something that would be used as much as you think it'll be used. Because if there's 10 steps, you're going to have your own procedures, operational things, security things that you have to be interjected. Now, a list of 10 things turned out to be 20 for one organization. A list of 10 turned out to be 3 for another organization. So I think the right thing there is like, it's just, again, consistently working with customers. It's like help you find your own prescription. Like we can give you guidance on what a prescription will look like for your organization. Hopefully that makes sense. But that seems like exactly what customers are asking for, rather than us give us a bulleted 1, 2, 3 list of stuff.
Yeah, it's
Jason to beat me up.
I have some real definite opinions on being on both sides of that one, but I guess the main thing that I think I would tell customers, and I'm clearly telling folks, is we argue about this one a lot internally because we want to do the best thing for customers. We want to put the information in the hands of customers so that they can be successful, right? We're not here to make your guys' life hard. We're not here to make you guys fail. We want you to be successful. And so sometimes that just means different things, though, and it means different things to different people. So we just have to find the best way of doing that at times. And that's why we have different collaborators and content creators as well, right? We have different folks putting different content out there, and they're all meant to help folks to be successful. Because if you're not using our products, why are we here, right? I mean, it's dumb, right? I mean, Anton wants his work done. We want people to know what Anton does because Anton does some awesome stuff, right? We don't want to just hoard it to ourselves, right? And clearly, me saying that out loud, it seems obvious, but it's reality. It really is. We want folks to use our stuff. We love our stuff that we produce, and we want folks to use it.
All right, cool. So, any last parting words? I'm not gonna have any words, but anybody else have?
Jason, I was just told to ask if you have a list of best practices that we could refer to.
Yeah, I have lots of lists. Best practice number 1 is don't listen to anyone who says that they have a best practice, because they don't know what they're talking about.
Yes.
Words like proven practice or current recommended practices.
Yeah. And there's always stuff, right? I mean, and every org's going to be a little bit different. I will generally say that I usually flip that. It's pretty easy to come up with things not to do generally, but also be cautioned there, because that list of things not to do is also an infinite list. Right? I can't give you a complete list of these things because it's completely unbounded, right? You know, why did this error code happen? Well, you know, that's pretty much an unbounded list. There's so many different things that could have contributed to that, and that's one of the things that makes our jobs difficult. But honestly, if you're in this game and you don't like that challenge, you're probably not going to be very successful. I mean, I think that's everyone on this call for sure. We like digging into those technical things, those minutia details, and figuring those things out. Sometimes we're frustrated as all get out to getting there, but that's also fun for us, right? And that's why Anton, I don't know, Anton, you must be coloring your hair, man, because I know mine's completely gray, and Steve, yours is getting there too. So that's why we have cut mine off. Love it. Yeah, Danny just pulled all this out.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and end the show. I mean, we could keep bantering for a whole nother hour, but I do appreciate everybody that has joined the show. Hopefully you learned something. If anything, you should have come away of learned something. Definitely turn it on. And you've got 6 people here that are passionate about helping you do the right thing in your organization. I hope nobody makes the mistakes that I made when I was a admin and director, and hopefully everybody can learn from all of us. So anyway, everybody be safe.
Good one. Go cloud attach. Thanks, guys. Appreciate the time.
Don't believe the config man FUD.